Welcome to the part-time show. We're recording on the 2nd of July 2020. I'm Dr. Kapil Amarasinga, and today I've got with me Reuben Yap from Zcoin. Reuben, how are you doing?
Doing great. It's a lovely day today. Wish there were more days like this.
I know. It's an off day for me, so this is perfect. Just chilling out here. Now, I just want to set the introduction. Why have we got you on? Well, actually, if you're watching this right now, basically it means we have done the initial Zcoin payment integration into the Particl desktop client. So for all you Particl fans, that now means, you can buy and sell your goods online on a trustless, decentralized platform using Zcoin. And that goes for the Zcoin community as well. But since this is a meeting of worlds, I was hoping you could just go ahead and tell me a few things about Zcoin and you. Reuben, over to you, man.
So Zcoin kind of started in 2016. We are a privacy-centric coin. I mean, we basically focus almost entirely on being a private cryptocurrency, right? So we don't have like marketplaces or things like that. And the basic idea of our privacy protocol, which is pretty different than what's out there, as such as using Particl like Ring CT, CoinJoin, or even ZK Snarks, is that we basically allow people to take a bunch of coins, destroy them, and then at any time in the future to redeem them for brand new ones. So the idea is that we're kind of like wiping your coin's transaction history. I think that's quite unique in the way of how privacy protocols work, especially in the blockchain space. And myself, I am the project steward of Zcoin, and what that means is basically, there's a Chinese saying, one leg kick. I basically do most of everything except coding. And why it's called the steward, because we see ourselves as like caretakers and stewards of the project, that maybe once everything's done, and the project's sufficiently decentralized, we have just looking after it for the wider community at large. I was a lawyer for 10 years prior to doing Zcoin, and did a lot of stuff, like kind of got into crypto in 2012, 2013. And besides that, I run an Aikido dojo, I do boxing and lots of other weird stuff like that.
Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Oh, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a little bit about me. I'm a practicing emergency medicine doctor in the UK. I properly got into crypto around 2016. I basically fell in love with a project called Particl, which was essentially offering to integrate e-commerce functionality into a blockchain. So not just a payment solution, but rather actually integrating all the key functions. So merging the listings, buying, selling, settlement, and the privacy aspects into a singular blockchain. And to me, that really struck out. So long story short, I wound up becoming a community ambassador and later an advisor to the projects. And I think it's really interesting. This isn't the first time we've met, by the way. For those of you watching, we met at New York Blockchain Week last year, and we spoke at length in San Francisco Blockchain Week. And actually, that's actually the first time I really learned about Zcoin, which gives you an idea of how insular crypto communities can be, because it's quite significant, you guys, in terms of what you've accomplished and what you're continuing to do. At that time, I didn't even realize that Zcash was a fork of you guys.
No, Zcash isn't a fork of us. They started later, but they actually have a different privacy protocol than us, so it's totally different. Yeah. We're actually thinking of rebranding, so.
I have to say though, you sent me a few videos and a few links, and I read through some of the work that you guys are academically doing in terms of enhancing privacy within the blockchain is really interesting. You've got something going on called the Lelantus protocol, and actually, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about it, because it no offense, I looked through these and I thought this is a huge step up from, say, Monero or Ring CT, which is, incidentally, that's the privacy protocol that we're using for the transactions on Particl at the moment. But yeah, tell us a bit about Lelantus.
Sure. So, I mean, so Lelantus is actually named after the Titan god of air or like moving unseen. So I think it's quite apt. And the basic idea of Lelantus was we were trying to find a way to do this burn and redeeming without trusted setup and to also hide amounts. So I guess for those people who are kind of already familiar with Ring CT or other types of decoy privacy systems, the way Ring CT or Mimblewimble kind of works is not really making your transaction disappear. It's more about having your transactions hide it in the crowd, like you introducing noise to make your transaction like there's some plausible deniability, right? And I guess like the classic example that I always give is kind of like farting in the lift, right? And it's
This was your
like
San Fran example, by the way. I love this. Yeah, go, yeah.
So, farting in the lift, it's like with decoy based systems. Let's say if I'm in the lift and I let out a fart, I'm the only one in the lift, and therefore that transaction or that fart belongs to me. And that's kind of how Bitcoin works, or like how blockchains work without any sort of privacy mechanism. The way like Nero works, or like Ring CT, or such as in Particl, you basically drag 10 other people into the lift with you, and you let out a fart, and you have that plausible deniability. Could be one of these 11 people, right? And then, of course, then you have Grin or like Mimblewimble protocols where you find everyone who wants to fart and then drag them into the room with you, and then we all fart together. So it's not clear whose fart is whose. But again, all this type of privacy protocols is that it's kind of limited. The plausible deniability is only limited to the number of people in the lift with you for that particular transaction. The way we at Zcoin works is kind of like we let out a fart, make it disappear, and then at any time in the future we can redeem it, redeem a fart, to make it appear, and that actually means that my plausible deniability is not just with the people in the lift with me, but basically anyone has gone into that lift before. So that anonymity set is a lot larger, and we feel that on a privacy standpoint, that's superior, like a superior model. But at the same time, we're also trying to achieve it without like any sort of the moon math that Zcash does. We have very basic cryptographic constructions. We aren't making any new what we call assumptions, and we don't have something what we call trusted setup. So I think that's kind of like it in a nutshell. Yeah.
This is what actually struck me was you use a trustless setup. So there's no pre-programmed oracle that you're kind of reliant on that you hope has been the access to has been destroyed. So that's the one thing, first thing. But with the way you guys implement privacy, when you say you offer a much larger anonymity set, I mean, if you look, I hope we link these videos at the end because they explain it really well, and we will. But the size of the data set that you're anonymizing against is magnitudes of exponents on exponents larger than something like a typical Ring CT setup. That's my understanding of it, and
Yes.
the way in which you but it's to do with attaching serial numbers to coins to effectively make sure that only the holder's serial number can spend it. Is that correct?
No, the serial number is just to prevent people from double spending it. Because when you burn and redeem, when you redeem, you have to kind of show that you're not redeeming something that you've already redeemed before, and that's the point of the serial number. But the beauty of it is kind of like view the way it works is that I present a zero knowledge proof to the network, and that the network says, all right, this proof we've never seen a proof like this before, but we know that we're going to give you these new coins with no previous transaction history. And the beauty about this proof is that it doesn't actually show which coins you actually burnt. So it's kind of like a receipt, like where receipt shows that you paid, but not exactly which which paper money that you actually give. So I think that's a good analogy there. Yeah.
I think, and this is kind of what excites me, is that you have a very interesting and actually very sophisticated privacy protocol that you're upgrading in a very substantive way that's currently pending an audit. And I think, the beauty of that is, now that we're doing payment integration of Zcoin into Particl, that creates that, to some extent, it really creates redundancy for us. So the Particl network, for those of you who don't know, and we mentioned it earlier, it has 3 transaction states: public, blinded, which uses confidential transactions, and anonymous to hide amounts that are transacted, and anonymous, which uses ring-CT to hide the sender and the receiver. But as you've pointed out, especially when networks are young and immature, and when the transaction activity isn't quite there yet, the pool sizes, the anonymity sets for ring-CT, they're not as big. It's easier to decipher through. So having a coin like Zcoin, essentially having an ability to send that into our client, and this is how the initial payment integration is working. This is an incremental process. So, you can download Particl Desktop version 2 today. You set it up, you create a market, you create a wallet called Market, and then that will automatically load all the listings on the marketplace. Now, traditionally and typically, all the transaction settlement is done in our native token part, and that uses ring-CT and CT for privacy. But what we've done, and this is where Zcoin, your community, gets involved, and we're so happy to have you on board. We're really happy to do this. Is that we, at the moment, we have SwapBot clients built into our desktop client. So we're using services like SimpleSwap and StealthX. So what you can do is you can send Zcoin directly into our desktop client effectively, and use our SwapBot, and it will convert it over into native part tokens, which you can then, in a KYC-free manner, which you can then use to buy and sell goods online on our marketplace. And then once you've done your buying and selling of goods, if you wish to exit back out into Zcoin, go for it. Use our SwapBot and you can come out. Now, obviously, you'll need to use stealth transactions on Zcoin to utilize the privacy aspects of Zcoin. But the upsides, for both of us, it's fairly mutual. So for Zcoin, we're now giving a direct platform that allows you to effectively buy and sell goods online, an e-commerce platform that's open source, that's free to use, that allows anyone to be a buyer, anyone to be a seller, that has no logins, no signups, that has no sort of KYC requirements. That uses automated smart contracts to effectively guarantee honesty from buyers and sellers. Now, for the Zcoin guys who're probably wondering, how do you do e-commerce without KYC? It really comes down to smart contracts. And what we've done is we've basically created a 2-party buyer-seller only escrow smart contract. So what happens in a nutshell is, if you're buying and selling goods on the Particl Marketplace, the seller puts a deposit. Currently, that's equal to the value of the item being sold. And then the buyer also puts a deposit into the escrow contract that's equal to the value of the item they're buying. So the buyer's effectively putting, if the item costs, say, $100, 100 USD equivalent, then the buyer's putting 200 USD into the pot, and the seller's putting 100 USD into the pot and shipping the goods across. Now, provided both parties agree that this has gone smoothly, the escrow unlocks, and buyer gets the goods they bought and they get their $100 deposit back, and the seller gets the buyer's $100 purchase plus their $100 deposit back, and then that works out. However, if resolution can't be reached, then you can either extend the escrow contract until resolution is reached, or you say it's not been reached, in which case both buyer and seller lose deposit. So in that scenario, if you're trying deliberately to scam, your net profit would be zero if you're a seller. And if you're a buyer trying to scam a seller, you're paying twice the value of the item. So there is an incentive mechanism in place. Now, We are working on variable escrows. We are doing work on reputation systems. There are other things on the way, but that's the current version that, now Zcoin community kind of has a form of indirect access, or has access to. So, we encourage the Zcoin community, who I believe are pioneers, who are academics, who are naturally open-minded and inclined towards this stuff, to download V2. Just be aware of the idiosyncrasies. There's a video guide that we can give you for the setup if you ever hit that where's the marketplace bit, which happens to so many people. But once you've created the market wallet, it's fairly straightforward to navigate. And I don't know, you've had to play around with it. What did you think?
I mean, like when I first came across Particl, I mean, the technical innovation aside, like the first guys to do ring CT on the Bitcoin core code, beautiful wallet with all this like marketplace. Obviously, a lot of work went into it, and it's actually quite surprising, like in terms of market cap where Particl is right now. But one of my gripes with the entire system, and this was something that I had shared to the team as well, was like, you want people to use this platform, right? The value of the platform is for people to use it. But then if you require people to use the platform, a lot of that, like, network effects is lost, right? Because now you're just like limiting yourself to the Particl community. And I mean, if any crypto community alone, even if you say you have the entire Bitcoin community, it's not enough. You need it to be seamless, right? So that everyone can get in, and your part is just like the fuel behind working it. And I feel like the integration of Zcoin, I think it's a good like first step. I'm not saying that, wow, my God, we're going to see like thousands and thousands of sales. I think none of us have that type of, we're not under this illusion. But the idea is like, hey, look, this is a way to start bridging other types of cryptocurrencies first, and then because your stable coins or whatever coins, as a way to Particl to be more of like a marketplace for everybody, right? Rather than just limiting it within the Particl community. So when you guys were doing this, like, of course, it's always fancy. Everyone talks about the most decentralized method, like atomic swaps and stuff like that. But I feel like what we achieve using, swap bots with no KYC, especially for the ticket sizes for most of the items on the marketplace, it really makes sense. And I felt that that's a big improvement into what it is. And of course, we are still looking at it. It's still, I would say, like it's ready, but it's not like prime time yet ready. I think you have version 3 coming. But I'm really impressed with I was actually really jealous of your wallet, and I was like, wow, it's really pretty, and makes me a bit ashamed at ours. And this is actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about, was that we are kind of like Zcoin. We're very like focused on the technology, the guts, right? Like the actual privacy technology and stuff like that. And we only have so much manpower, right? And at the same time, it's like, yeah, of course we want a marketplace, but should we go and create one from scratch and then like bootstrap it and stuff like that? That's why I felt like it really made sense to just like, okay, yeah, get on Particl or get on existing marketplaces, like a project that has like dedicated, it's almost its like entire life cycle, well, a good part of its life cycle, dedicating itself to the marketplace. And it made much more sense rather than trying to develop our own. So yeah, I thought it was a good synergy there. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you on this. I think one of the really interesting things is that this payment integration, I stress it's the first step in that payment integration. It's an evolving process. It goes back to what I was saying about the work that we've been doing in the background on atomic swaps. On a technical level, that stuff is ready. It's smooth. You can do individual swaps, but creating the user interface, creating the liquidity pools, these are incremental things that will come with time as the network grows. Now, I see, and going back to what you said, Zcoin is one of the coins that we've effectively integrated on a KYC-free basis. But actually, upcoming is things like the DAI stablecoin, funny you mentioned stablecoins. DAI is our next payment integration after this. We've been looking at things like Monero, Horizon. There's a couple of other ones actually that's slipping my mind right now. Nix actually.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is, every time that we speak to a project, we always find a way to collaborate with them just beyond the payment integration. We always find a way to work together with them in a way that kind of helps develop their ecosystem as well as helps develop ours and helps us grow together organically. So I see us systematically over time evolving into an ecosystem where you could send Zcoin in through a private transaction, ring CT it through Particl, buy sell goods online in settlement, exit to DAI or exit through Monero. Essentially multiple layers of obfuscation, multiple layers of privacy, of redundancy in your privacy setup, and multiple layers of redundancy should anything sort of give way, but also multiple layers of synergy, multiple layers of cross-networking. And in terms of the evolution of this interface, going into atomic swaps, I think once the Particl network gains sufficient liquidity, traction, and usage, I think that transition to direct atomic swaps will be a lot easier. Now, bearing in mind, Particl's an open source platform. Now, we release the code in a delayed sequence. So when the V3 comes out, there'll probably be a 6 to 12 month delay before the code is released to the public. But actually, when it is, with this V3 release, one, that code will be significantly reformatted, and two, when that code's released, it will come with an SDK most likely. So actually, there's nothing to stop the Zcoin community from taking a look at that code and maybe building solutions which streamline the payment integration, or maybe even building custom white label versions of the Particl Marketplace that just display prices in Zcoin, maybe utilize an atomic swap interface to allow the underlying settlement, or maybe, I hate saying this, but in the spirit of open source, just go for Zcoin completely. And I'm completely, in favor of that, because it creates multiple pathways and options for communities to evolve in. I don't know how you feel about that. You got any thoughts?
No, I was just thinking about Ghost.
Yeah. My only issue with them is they in their white paper, they do the acknowledgement, but their community marketing, oh my God, it's shambolic. I think I spent a morning in their Telegram, and I think I must have basically fried whatever brain cells I had activated that morning. I think my issue with this is I think the open source concept is great, provided people don't abuse it and they pay due attribution. And unfortunately, I don't think Ghost have necessarily been acting. I think they close it. I think they're burning bridges that they don't have to. The way they're behaving. That's my own view. It's nice to see that within. It's nice to see the Zcoin community being open and welcoming and willing to collaborate. But I don't want to give the internal correspondence for this. Least to say, it just annoyed me.
Yep, definitely. I mean, we don't have to go into that. I just thought it was a bit funny. I was like, oh yeah, everyone's okay to copy our code, and I'm like,
I would have been fine. I would have the way they went about it was essentially John McAfee denying existence of our project, saying it's not a fork, it's brand new, yada yada. And anyone can just read their white paper, but the thing is, the vast majority of people don't read white papers. Yep. The vast majority of people don't do due diligence, and I think that's actually an important thing. That if you're going to fork a project, that actually when you do your marketing, that you just give due accreditation. I think that's important.
I do think it's quite a sad state. I mean, just shows the maturity of the crypto system, right? I mean, like McAfee was promoting, basically a pseudo privacy coin previously, like Verge, and then now it's like going off like this. And the thing is that, you look at all this thing and you're like, it's so bad, but it probably do well. Yeah. And that's quite sad, but yeah, I mean, let's not give them more attention than they need
Yeah,
to. But the idea is like, one of the things that, when I was looking at Particl, and I was also like talking to your team about it, was like, building liquidity for
mm,
part, right?
yeah,
And of course, I introduced you guys to Hummingbot, and then I don't know, I was kind of like wondering what were your views on that,
sure. So
because obviously it's an open source market making bot, and like I think one of the issues with Particl was because it's quite an old coin. I mean, like in
mm,
terms of crypto space, right? And right now the major exchange is Bittrex, and even Bittrex as an exchange has been kind of slowly dying, right? And I mean, like, to be fair, so obviously, like, what is Particle's view on that? Because obviously, if you want a kind of very vibrant
mm.
ecosystem, your project needs liquidity. I mean, you can be like a totally no development project like Dogecoin, but have liquidity and you're fine,
Mm.
right? But you cannot be like a most fancy tech, most incredible technology, but don't have liquidity. And I'm not even saying that Zcoin is great in this thing. I would say we're okay, but liquidity is really hard to do. To me, it's in this current market, it's the single most important thing for cryptocurrency today. Yeah.
So I don't disagree with you. In fact, I think liquidity is essential. And you know, when I came into crypto properly in 2016, it took me a while to really understand the meaning and the value behind this concept. With regards to Hummingbot, I can sort of give you a few sort of updates. So I spoke to a few guys who are running. I can tell you now, the
Hmm.
foundation did look extensively into it, and they did test it. um, there's a few things. So with the foundation can't engage in market making.
Yeah, that's fine.
Team
I
can, the
understand
community
that.
can. The other thing with Hummingbot specifically was on Bittrex, they allowed for making bids, but they wouldn't allow for taking for some reason.
But
Now,
what's wrong with, like, why would you need to take though? Because the thing is
that
that
was I think I think that's so I spoke to the people
Joe.
who were
Mm.
running around. Yeah, well, I spoke to Joe. There's two people, and I think basically here's what I've said to him. I said, look, just run Hummingbot on HitBTC. Get the community to run Hummingbot on HitBTC. It's free. It's open source. You get rewards on tokens. Yeah, you can't. Uh, I think firstly the whole maker taker thing. I think we should have just pushed it out harder anyway. Because if you have many makers anyway,
Yeah.
then
I
it's
mean, I
well,
mean,
it's not wash trading if it's just
yeah,
making.
correct. And I mean, listen me out. Like, the thing is, was that when I was first looking at Particl, I mean, the whole idea was, well, like, why do we need a decentralized marketplace to
Mm,
begin with, right? Because we don't want to have an intermediary like Amazon. Because
mm,
having a centralized intermediary has a lot of advantages, right? You
mm,
have a central place where you can fulfill from, right? You have
mm,
this unified experience, and I think, like, Amazon, like their third party marketplace is much bigger than the goods that they actually sell. And the main reason is that, first of all, because you are giving Amazon a large proportion of the fees to do this,
mm,
right? And I mean, that's what Joe was telling me. Like, this decentralized marketplace, one of the things is that we can sell it cheaper because we go direct user to user. And that's one of the beauties of a decentralized marketplace. But the way when I saw it was like, because of the liquidity not being there for Particl, what's the point of saying, yeah, I'm going to save like this amount in fees, but then because there's no liquidity, the price shifts because whenever I buy into it, whenever I sell, it should
the
not, like,
spread becomes very wide, or there's a sudden shift in price.
correct.
I
And
think
yeah.
there's a couple of caveats to this. I agree with you. You need to have a decent amount of base liquidity to get things going, but the way the particle network is set up from a tokenomics point of view, if you look at the base coin supply, which is around 9
Hmm.
million coins, if you factor in that it's a proof of stake network, And if you look historically at any given point, around 50 to 70% of coins are locked in staking at any time.
Wow.
Now, once an escrow contract is created, every time you purchase a good, you're creating an escrow contract. Now, going back to what I said, you're effectively, for a single purchase, you're locking up 300% of the value of the item into an escrow contract. So as soon as you have, if you have 10 escrow contracts, you suddenly locked up a significant chunk of circulating supply. Now, bearing in mind, it's not the staking supply, that's completely locked. It's just the available circulating supply. So you've created a restriction on liquidity that relative to a fiat currency, say, favors an upward valuation of the token. So there is a psychological incentive for people who, so I'm not going to say this is the be all and end all. This is one caveat that's worth exploring. It's that if you're buying and selling goods, the more active the marketplace becomes, the more escrow contracts are there. And the more escrow contracts are there, the less the supply of available parts. So actually the value of part, the more active it becomes, will naturally and should naturally go up in time. Now that favors you both as a seller and a buyer. And I'm not going to, almost as an early adopter, if you're an early adopter in this system and you're helping to generate that traction and that usage, you'll find that potentially your profit margins could be substantially higher, if you simply keep that part locked away or staked and then sell it several months down the line on the proviso that the network effect is growing and the usage of the network's growing. Now, part of this is, this is partly why we've got the payment integrations in place, is that by, popping a payment integration for one community, we can give, those crypto users a means to effectively buy and sell goods online, fiat free and KYC free, using our privacy features if they don't have that native to their coin, or to augment their privacy features with ours if they've got native privacy features built in, or whatever native tech they built in can effectively work synergistically into our network. So that kind of says, okay, you now have people using our network, they like our user interface, things are moving seamlessly, the native value of parts going up. Those who recognize that might go, okay, let me tell other people about this. And then you factor in other aspects like, when you don't have commissions. And this helps again, because yes, the spreads can be, at the moment, the spreads can easily be, about 8 to 10, I can see spreads of 8 to 10% in current liquidity conditions. But actually, if you remove commissions, so Amazon, if they're doing up to 40% commission sell, which they do, they have done it, and eBay's about 15%. Even if your coin valuations have a volatility of spread around 10%,
it's still saving.
You're still saving. You still, as a seller, you're earning more, and you could still sell the same goods for less. And if you're able to make more and sell the goods for less, then you've got a real incentive to onboard customers. And once you're onboarding customers, you're creating liquidity and traction within the network, which is allowing your own token stack to grow in fiat value. So there is a tokenomic incentive, and it's all tied in. Now, at the same time, if we're doing payment integrations for other communities, we're growing and merging their community with ours, in effect. So if they're enjoying our marketplace and if they're using it regularly, then they potentially can learn more about their platform, about our platform. We learn more about theirs. And aside from cross collaboration between devs, there can be cross collaboration between communities. So part of the issue that we have is we've not really spent much on marketing. We haven't been overly focused on community growth. A lot of our focus has been on product development. And now we're shifting more towards community.
As your product gets more and more ready, right?
Exactly. So by growing our community, we potentially have, or growing our user base, we potentially have more people that can engage in using services like Hummingbot and self-liquidity to help us build a more organic and more distributed liquidity pool. If you go into the Particl chats, let's be completely honest about how small the Particl community is at the moment. I would say, 1,000 people are regular stakers. If you look at the rich list, 60%, 50% of the supply is held by the top 1,000. I think, I can't remember it, but it's a small community. You go into the Telegram chat, there's probably about 30 people active regularly on a day-to-day basis. If you count and scan across, it's about 30 people. So we can internally chat within Telegram, and that's where most of our activity happens. And we can probably get I estimate that we can probably get, we certainly got 5 or 6 people that could run things like Hummingbot, and that would make a significant, that actually, even the 2 people that have been using self-liquidity, that's made a substantial difference. But it's the idea of payment integrations with different communities. So Zcoin, large Telegram community, active chat, friendly, academic, tech orientated, willing to give things a try, understand the benefits of collaboration. That's why, and you're a great guy, by the way. I mean, honestly, this goes back down to personalities and people, network effects as people. People like you, listen, when I met you in San Fran properly, I knew you were honest and straight. I liked you. I won't lie. You're a good guy. It's very straightforward. We had a very straightforward chat. And that's such an important thing, honesty and integrity. We don't want to onboard projects that we think lack integrity. I know what it's like. I've seen you don't, because it actually hurts our project in the long run. That's why we've gone with Zcoin payment integration as we in our community. We've got several members who repeatedly clamor for Monero, and whilst that is something we will incorporate later down the line, we've had nothing but resistance from their Reddit threads, from their mods, from their, even if I remember the last time we put a teaser post saying, shall we do this? And we had within about 20 minutes, we had plus 30 votes. And then within less than an hour, we had their mod basically posting an article that was accusing our project of being a scam. And that's not what
the whole shadow cache thing.
Yeah, from the shadow cache days. And that's what you want. We don't need to tread old history. The communications on this project, and if you go historically, the biggest issues with Particl has always been communication. You know that because of your efforts with Hummingbot. I know that. The issues that I found out about Hummingbot, I learned earlier this week. I was like, why didn't they tell you directly? I don't understand why that had been not been communicated to you. And I think there's always been an issue with communications, which has been improving significantly. But it goes right back to the SDC part coin swap. That was to me, I was one of the guys when I found out we were transitioning to Particl. I lost my shit. Let me let me not kid you. And the guys who were there at the time, the sources, that they knew it. I lost my shit. I was like, this is a scam. And I was like, I gave them the benefit of the doubt, and they delivered. I was like, okay, fine. Bearing in mind this was something that it segued into from Ethereum. I was an Ethereum investor and stuff, and that's great. You can just ignore that. I don't want to get into Ethereum, but it's not as interesting to me. But yeah, going back into that, yes, integrity and honesty, and that's why guys like you. That's why we've been in communication with the MakerDAO team, and that's why we're in touch with Flare Wallet and Nix, Horizon Labs, and there's a couple of others that sequentially. That's kind of like, okay, you've got a mature community that really appreciates what this is about. And going back to Ghost, this is me digging at them. You are not after speculators. We're actually after people who genuinely want to see this ecosystem grow and be used in an organic way to fulfill its potential and its promise. And that's a KYC-free reality. That's a reality that respects privacy, that works against anti-competitive practices that Amazon and other big vendors are now being shown to engage in, and that essentially just respects the customer. I don't want to have to. You want to know? Can I give you a quick anecdote? I'm talking loads now. I went through an exercise about a year ago where I contacted every website, or tried to contact every website I ever had an account with, and just said, delete all my personal information, take me off your system. You know, a third of the time I'd get sent back with forms to fill in, yada yada. It was a fucking ball ache. I remember one Chinese exchange, I'm not going to name them, they wanted a copy of my passport to remove my details from their database. That pissed me off. So for me, if we're building a platform that's going to allow you to do currency interchange, fiat-free commerce, no logins, no signups, no commissions, that this is why I'm drawn to this project. Actually, and this is why the fact that we can do payment integrations, and I'm sorry, I'm so doing it all the time, but the fact that I get to chat to you and learn about legitimate projects that are doing interesting things, that's what keeps my fire in this industry alive. Because if I was a speculator, it would have burnt out a long time ago. It could have burnt out in the middle of 2018 or whatever. And actually, that's why I don't find Ethereum interesting, because I entered it as a speculator. I still have my holdings, yada, yada, but I just don't find Ethereum, not their token ecosystem, there's some really good projects within it, but Ethereum as a project, it doesn't interest me as much. Does that make sense?
No, I understand. I mean, one of the things, I mean, like this is, I guess, more for like the Zcoin listeners. Like, you know, obviously, I think this is one of the most common questions you get, right? Like, as a kind of decentralized marketplace, and with no KYC or anything like that, how do you prevent people from listing like not so great stuff? Like, you know, I mean, I know the answer, but I think like for the benefit of the viewers, I think that's a good question to bring out. Yeah.
So this also relates to why we used a native token and native blockchain. So the native token, it's not just has privacy features built in, it's got on-chain governance features. So the part token acts as a voting token. Any listing on the marketplace can be flagged by any user, and it enters into a global queue. But the people who hold part tokens can then go through that and effectively vote things off. So we have a mechanism in place. And to me, that's the idea of a community democratic consensus, which is, look, the marketplace and the quality of listings and the appropriateness reflects its community. You can argue that it's idealistic and optimistic, but if you look at the core of this community, I think you'll find, you know, a lot of us, we're not, whilst we're very tolerant, we're going to strike off things that are clearly should not, you know, rocket propelled grenades and flame, you know, things that are clearly overtly illegal and can do harm. We're going to vote these things and we'll get them flagged up.
How does the voting system work? Is it based on the stake in part? Or
sure. So one part token is equivalent to one vote. The current threshold for delisting a listing is about 9,000 part. Now, again, if you look at our initial distribution, have a look on chains.info or use a explorer of your choice. You'll see the distribution. I think if you look at a lot of our core community, I'm not going to lie right now, a lot of us hold enough to simply. I personally actually am an advocate for increasing that amount. But actually, as you find, my belief is as there's more buying and selling of goods, there'll be greater distribution of the coin. And as there's greater distribution of the coin, even if it's on a background of restricted circulating supply, effectively it will reflect within the voting schemas. The other thing I want to sort of say is, you know, this is not my point to say I advocate. If you're worried about censorship, one of the upcoming features within our, and this, you know, one of the upcoming features within our version.
It's your own marketplace, right?
Yeah,
like your
own marketplace. One of the upcoming features, if you're worried about about people, you know, misusing their votes against you, one of the upcoming features is something called multi-markets. So you can basically, the network, it was never designed just to support one marketplace. It was actually built to support an infinite number of marketplaces. The user interface and some of the backends work had to be done to enable that. But in the upcoming V3 version that's coming out, you know, any Zcoin user or any Bitcoin user or any Particl user can effectively download the desktop and create as many different marketplaces as they want. Each has its unique view key effectively, And if you share that view key internally within a group, that's only visible to that group. So going to what you said, I'm not going to lie, I think there's potential for misuse of that system. But at the same time, it's a bit like we're going back to the cash economy. If you look, here's my argument. It's a trade-off argument, right? Which is, if you look at the digital e-commerce economy, what we sacrificed when we transitioned from old school buying and selling in shops with cash and fiat and not using debit or credit cards. When we switched to debit and credit cards, you had to give up your personal information when you were a third-party transaction processor. When you switched to online e-commerce, you had to switch to debit and credit cards, so you're trusting a bank. And then you also had to, on top of that, trust a third-party service provider to hold your personal information. Now, what we're doing is we're creating with this network an e-commerce platform that allows you to not use a bank and allows you to effectively make cryptocurrency networks your bank, and allows you to, because Zcoin or DAI, whatever, or part, they can all be your wallets. That's your bank. And it effectively gets rid of the centralized party. You're getting rid of the Amazon, you're getting rid of the eBay, and you're encouraging a cash economy. Now, I think my general view, and it's not the great answer, it's not the be all and end all answer, is one, markets can still be flagged. So if a market is found to be distributing child pornography or whatever, that can be instantly flagged and removed. I will say this, when we were at the last conference, we already started a line of dialogue with the World Economic Forum guys. The branch is based in South America. They're digital e-commerce initiative. So they're keeping an eye, we're keeping a communication with them. And my whole view is, with regards to things like that, we're willing to work. I believe the network as a whole, I believe the community as a whole would be willing to work with relevant authorities from a safeguarding point of view. I think the other thing is, we could potentially we've looked into things like delegated voting, not delegated staking, but delegated voting. And I haven't actually checked up on the status of that. I need to get in touch with the devs who were. But potentially we could in the future, enable a delegated voting service to exist, so token holders could delegate their votes to a certain body whose job it is to go and hunt these things down and to act accordingly. So we could work with certain authorities, but there's so many questions. I don't have the answers for it, I'm afraid.
No, I mean, it was just like an interesting question because, like, obviously, as a proof of stake currency, don't really have like distribution in a sense, right? Everything's already kind of distributed. You have especially in Particl, you already have like a bunch of like people with significant part holdings. How do we get that, like, that wealth, or not wealth, or rather that currency into more hands? And that we hope that, it's not just from staking and stuff like that, it's from actual use of the network, right? Because obviously, I think the thing that you kind of want to avoid is, I mean, this is my own personal kind of what I find that is a weakness in like pure proof of stake currency is that once you kind of create that distribution, unless whales decide to let go, the circulation of coins kind of stagnates unless there's some huge movement otherwise. And especially because we were also thinking about governance as well. I mean, not in the sense of delisting or stuff like that, but like where to take the project forward. And I found it really difficult to say, like, one coin, one vote. I mean, that in theory sounds really good, but once you have like big whales, they can kind of like dictate where things goes. And there's that trust that they will act in the best interest of the currency because they have the whales, right?
So,
but I actually found that wasn't actually the case. I actually found that many whales, their interest was, how do I get the most short-term gain for my coins rather than the ecosystem at large. Of course, I don't think the guys at Particl are like that. I mean, met you guys, all of you are really passionate and you've gone through really some really tough times and like slog through, and you know, many of you guys I think are not even being paid, you know, and you're just like working for sheer passion and belief in what you guys do. So I think that's like a lot better. But you know, especially for other currencies or even currencies like ours, right, where definitely there's some people speculating on that, and of course we do have a proof of work portion, but I think it's an interesting question on like governance and one coin one vote type of voting mechanisms. But yeah, just something to think about.
I think the solutions will evolve. I think we've got a rudimentary solution in place, and I think it will give us a certain amount of coverage. Interesting you say that. I think the bear market has actually been pretty good for our distribution as far as I can see. And for a proof of stake currency, again, if you look at our overall distribution, it's not bad. If you start looking at the individual wallet sizes, it is actually, you know, for a proof of stake currency, this is not something like 95% of the coins are held by a handful of individuals. We are talking at least 1,000 people looking at this. And you know, when you look at our relative market cap, that's not bad. You know,
so you're actually seeing like during the bear market, you actually decentralize your holdings.
a
That's
lot
really
of our
interesting.
speculators were purged. A lot of our speculators self-purged. Right. If you look at our peak speculative value, which is peak of the bull market, which is all approaching $50, you know, again, it goes back to what you say about liquidity exiting global crypto markets and speculators exiting the global crypto markets. There's a gradual So from that point of view, I think the bear markets have been good because they've kind of filtered out. If you take legitimate projects with serious goals and honest intentions, if those communities, they've effectively been filtered out of people who are purely in it for short-term speculative gain. I think I see that reflects within the Zcoin community, having lurked around in your Telegram for the last few weeks.
The thing is that, you know, with the Zcoin community, like I know this for a fact, because like, you know, I know some of the whales, right? And like I found that bear markets are actually centralizing in distribution. I mean, yeah, you have less people involved, but these are the people that believe in your project the most. But it does centralize distribution. It doesn't decentralize it because less people, and these people are like, oh yeah, I'm getting at a bargain. They have to believe in the project to think that it's a bargain, right? And well, you know, obviously I felt that and then, you know, there are some interesting community members who started complaining like, oh, you know, the whales are like buying everything out. And I'm like, whose fault is that, right? Like that's not like their fault, right? I mean, isn't it good that they're buying, you know? Like yeah.
Well, this is my thing, Dave. If the bigger a whale you are, it says to me that your sell targets are lower. There are people, you know, I'm one of the most active members in this community, and I actually, if you look at my standing in that top 100, it's not, you know, there's plenty of people above me. And here's the thing, you know, right? If you're buying if you're buying stacks from a speculative view, that means in your head you've worked out in your mind what you think the intrinsic value of that network is worth. Right? So it's a matter of perspective. If I am not under any pressure, I personally think the Particl network, you know, people think I'm absurd. I think if you look at what I've been saying, if you look at our network in detail, I think, you know, the intrinsic value, if we gain traction and non-speculative usage, you know, to me, something like $10,000 a coin isn't unreasonable. And I know that sounds absurd, but you really have to start like going into my head and seeing my thought process for that. So I hold enough to say, well, for me, I don't need the value to go past a certain point. Yes, like you said, I actually was one of the people that expanded my stack during the bear market. But then even I hit a point where I was like, well, look, the cost of this versus my regular income, yada, yada. I know there are other guys who make far more money than I do, who hold larger stacks or have access to more capital, but I expect and I believe that they will sell portions of their stack at certain price points, which will lead to distribution. I mean, every coin ultimately, if you look at Ethereum again, You know, look at the days when it was sub $1. The community was tiny, but as it grew, you know, all those whales essentially cashed out because everyone has their own internal point at which to distribute.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of us guys, you know, guys like me, yeah, we're going to distribute some of our stacks. And ultimately, that is part of what building long-term organic liquidity is about. For me, it's about having a non-speculative use case that is actually engaging and is truly something that is intriguing, engaging, something that you would actively participate in. And then, sorry, I'm almost losing my train of thought. Yeah, having that and then just allowing that network to grow organically. You know, I genuinely believe there are very few people in the world whose mindsets are truly like Jeff Bezos. Let's use him as the ultimate example of accumulating whale who's conducting a 51% attack on the global economy. If you let him continue what he's doing, eventually he'll own most of the world's wealth, and then all fiat currencies will technically collapse. Here's my theory. This is what Bitcoin taught me, by the way, is that the global economy is under a 51% attack because 1% of the population or own more than 50% of the world's wealth. And over the next 10 years, if you keep looking at the trend, it's going to be 0.1% of the population owning over 50% of the world's wealth. But to me, what you're doing there is you're creating an artificial liquidity restriction because you're locking up all of that fiat value in the hands of a minority, which could instead be used to develop infrastructure, grow services, build businesses, diversify wealth, improve standards of living. Whereas actually it's just getting locked up into a minority and building up in banks and then growing as a result of speculative cycles, which is fundamentally not healthy for an economy. I take the completely opposite view of this. I actually do believe that, you know, long-term wealth distribution is a good thing because it allows people to get access to liquidity and capital. So, yeah, I do think, yeah, what's my point here? I think the system will organically evolve over time if it's useful, if it gains traction, if it's genuine, and if it's something that people want to use. It's like spoons. Everyone needs spoons, right? You know,
I like your optimism. I mean, as a lawyer, for me, I'm a lot more, I guess, I wouldn't call it realistic, maybe a bit more negative, right? Because we're trained to look at flaws, and you know, I was actually like recently interviewed, and he was like saying, you know, where do you see privacy coins? Where do you see cryptocurrencies? And I was like, realistically, we may just remain a niche forever, and that may be actually okay, you know, because I don't think fiat is going to go anywhere. You know, as long as we have countries, as long as we have governments, I think it's a bit of a pipe dream to say that we're going to replace fiat, right? The way I see it, it's like the best case scenario that's realistic is that we're a big enough niche that, you know, I guess I would say like governments are like would be a bit hesitant to start like, you know, doing massive like QE or quantitative easing because they know that there's this alternative there that's right at their doorstep that they can't really control. And I feel like that, you know, hopefully that would lead to, you know, one of the things that really scares me, which is the rise of CBDCs or central bank digital currencies, right? Where basically the government or the Federal Reserve has like vision into how you spend your money on the individual level. And I remember speaking to a bunch of bankers on this because I was invited to speak about blockchain and cryptocurrencies with all the top CEOs of bankers in Malaysia. And they were really excited about this whole CBDCs, and you could hear them like they were saying, like, "Oh my god, we can see everything. The economists would love it, and you know, no more money laundering, and because we know the movement of every single coin." I'm like, "Can you guys look here yourself? Like, don't you see a problem there? Like, really? You know?" I found that was very shocking. Like, you know, these people are obviously intelligent, but because they've already kind of been in this system for so long, they're thinking like that's okay. And we really that's why I feel like, you know, cryptocurrencies, if it were to like, you know, exist in its original precepts, you need privacy. You need all
so
this type of stuff. Yeah.
I know. I was just going to say, I think in that scenario, I could actually see cryptocurrencies growing. You know, if you think the U.S. printed off what 2 trillion, 3 trillion, losing count in a month just pre.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Right? That was an instant. If you look at the price of gold, look what gold did. And actually, I'm surprised Bitcoin didn't catch up more. But it goes back to what you said. If we do get central bank digital currencies, value is a system, and the value of a system, I believe, is what you make of it, on what you throw at it. So if we are converting effectively fiat value into cryptocurrency for the buying and selling of goods online, you're effectively transferring value from one system into another. Now, the way I see it, this is an example of where the relative illiquidity of cryptocurrencies compared to fiat is probably the biggest stimulus point for its boom, because as cryptocurrencies have an incentive to grow intrinsically, that they can act as a kind of digital gold at base. They can provide privacy that traditional currency formats don't provide, and they can provide sort of freedom and independence to the end user. So actually, if you're providing a means through which to do e-commerce using these in a non-standard, non-traditional way. So, and this is again why I'm very positive about networks like Particl and decentralized e-commerce. The reason I'm really positive about it is because you're providing a legitimate material through which cryptocurrencies can buy and sell goods, non-speculative.
I think one of the key moments of making a cryptocurrency real is, wow, I can buy stuff with it, and I think that's kind of lost with Bitcoin. I mean, that was actually when I first started mining Bitcoin with ASICs, and it just felt like a game, right? But when I actually bought something with it, or I actually converted into something wow, people are willing to pay me money for this magic internet money, then it becomes a lot more real. If I can spend something, even I don't care, it may be converted into local fiat or whatnot, but the fact that I can spend it and turn it into real world items, that makes it wow. It's a very big psychological thing. This is real. I can actually do shit with this, right? It's not just number go up. And that's why I kind of feel everyone hates on Bitcoin Cash or about their whole adoption as cash and stuff like that. But I actually think that, one of the initial things that really got me into it was the feeling that this was actually money, not just a gold bar that I can't really spend, right? Yeah.
Oh, I agree. And I think gold is a very niche thing. I think there will always be room for Bitcoin and digital gold, but it's not the most interesting thing in this space. Smart contracts. This is why I was aware of Bitcoin in 2012 and 2013. I sat on buying almost 10 grand worth of Bitcoin in that period, anyway. But the fact is, digital gold is interesting. Smart contracts are interesting. Decentralized finance is that next evolution, but decentralized e-commerce, I think that's the next untapped area. And that goes back to what you said, which is that, it felt good to use this medium, and you could see all the inherent advantages of using this medium for commerce in the act of doing so. But the thing is, most people haven't realized that yet, because we've not really educated them, and we've not given them a good enough reason to, and we've not given them good enough tools to do it with. And that's partly what I hope we're doing with our network is, I hope you guys at Zcoin, I hope you guys download the desktop, just create a wallet in it called Market, and just start playing around with the swap bot and just start seeing a taste of the future. The version 3, spoiler alert, I think we're getting an estimate of about 8 weeks, right, before the testnets come out, which is going to upset some people in our community because they're hoping a bit sooner. But I think that's a reasonable estimate.
When did you say? Sorry.
Version 3 of our market.
In September,
coming out between 4 to 8 weeks was the last estimate I got. Estimate, right? So I'm veering towards the 8-week side of things because I know how dev cycles work. But actually, if you download what we're doing today, you can already see the significant direction that we're moving in. It's just that no one is aware of it. And how did Bitcoin build itself into something? If you look back at the history of the Bitcoin, it becomes very apparent. it's not too dissimilar to ours in some way. You just had people who had a very specific dream and vision, were driven by a very specific purpose, who accepted eventually the fact that they were small, but just kept building something that they felt was useful, that eventually got used. And when it got used, it sort of spiraled out from there. So you just got to keep that kind of, you got to keep that kind of optimism, that kind of faith that you know what you're doing is fundamentally necessary, pragmatically useful. And I think that's the key thing here. And I think that's partly, again, it goes back to like why we're working with you guys. We like the idea that this is a network. Networks are about people. Networks are about synergy. So actually bringing you guys in with us, and it allows our technologies to evolve independently yet work together. I think that's one of the understated things here. You know,
I think this is like, to me, this is really good. Like, you know, one of the things is the whole tribalization of crypto communities, right? And it's kind of silly because it's, I mean, beyond the outright scams, you know, I mean, like, to me, I actually have a decent relationship with Monero, you know, and the way I see it, it's like, yeah, you know, we may disagree on the best way to do things, but at the end of the day, we're all going towards the same goal, right? Then, and yeah, you know, we may say like, oh, your way isn't as good as our way, but the thing is that as long as they're genuine attempts at trying to solve the same problem, there's no reason why we can't collaborate. And one of the things, like, you know, for us, we're collaborating in building, you know, like the decentralized marketplaces, and, you know, kind of combining the communities together, right? And like, for example, with Monero, like, you know, their researcher Sarang actually like helped us with Lelantus with like looking through our paper, you know, giving feedback, and that in turn actually sort of gave them the inspiration to develop their own privacy protocol called Octarus and Triptych, which has a lot of elements that are probably Lelantus inspired. So I feel like, yeah, it's great competition, but at the same time, it's like, because of this good competition, as long as there's still there are still ways to work together, and I feel like I wish more projects were like this, you know, so that, like, we may be like, you know, relatively small individually, but if we have all these like-minded people together, then that's really good. But, you know, sometimes I see like many privacy, I mean, like, even within Monero, you know, I think in Zcoin we don't really have it because, you know, partially because I'm the one that's kind of very, I don't really talk badly about other privacy coins. You know, I mean, you say like, oh yeah, I think our approach is better, but I never like, oh yeah, ours is like the best thing. Everything else is total shit, right? Which gives me a lot of flack, because like you create an account, you have to create that like that image that you're like the number one, and even though reality may not be the case, right? Because the real fact is that no one's number one, because everything has trade-offs. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm quite, I really hope like this is the beginning of like, you know, a growing trend of like, you know, smaller projects that have the same goal kind of working together, and rather than, you know, because when you're already a Bitcoin, you're kind of already big enough to be your own echo chamber. uh and that gives like kind of disincentive. I mean, like, take a look at what Bitcoin has become, right? It is basically an echo chamber, and the way they act sometimes is quite sad. It's like they're not honest about like how slow the development is going. They're not honest about the limitations of the platform, and if you talk about anything else besides Bitcoin, you're like a social pariah. Well, I feel that if enough of our privacy projects come together, or cryptocurrencies come together, and we can work together, then we're like, hey, you know, this is a united community. I mean, we may not have exact the same views, but we all kind of agree, because the cryptocurrency community is so small to begin with. We kind of need to be together, rather than like everyone's like, I'm the best, and it's just like a bunch of little ants arguing over a piece of sugar, right? Yeah.
This is the thing. I completely agree. You know, as I believe in a privacy ecosystem. You know, to sum up, we bring our communities together. We're bringing our developers together. We're bringing our liquidity together. We're pooling it, and that creates a network effect that draws people who may never have heard about these systems, because you know that, and I know that we only know so many people, but once we start merging these communities, that creates its own gravitational pull. If we spend time bitching about each other, if we spend time trash talking, what happens? People are going to see that trash talk on public forums and they're going to go, I don't like this, and I don't really think that's great either. You're putting people off by belittling, especially serious technologies. And actually, it's interesting you say that with regards to the Monero devs. I can tell you now that the Particl devs actually get on with the Monero devs. They've had friendly chats. It's very interesting the difference between dev communities, dev relationships, and community perceived relationships. And I didn't realize this until I attended the conferences, that it's so different from one realm. You could spend all your time in Reddit and Twitter and get a completely skewered picture of what's going on. It's a small community.
I was actually turned off from Monero when I first got into cryptocurrency, because there was Dash and there was Monero. I mean, these were like the two only private cryptocurrencies then, and I was like, oh yeah, Dash was like actually more welcoming. Like Monero is like RTFM, read the fucking manual, right? And like, whoa, you're so dumb. And then like, oh, you like Dash? Like, oh, you're a scammer. And then like, because I ran a VPN service, and then I started accepting Dash, and then I got like threats like from Monero guys who were like saying, oh, you must be a scam because you accept a scam coin. And I was like, the fuck, like really, when I saw that, I was like, wow, these people are like so freaking toxic. And it kind of made me overlook at the good things about Monero, and I felt that was a shame, because like that initial few experiences basically kind of like turned me away. Like, wow, this is just a bunch of dicks. Yeah.
But that's exactly what I mean. I mean, it creates apprehension that you then have to go over. It goes back to me. I personally have been really hesitant about pushing for Monero. I've been like, yes, do Monero, but can we just get other communities involved so that we can just make the case that we're not a scam? Because I know instantly we could have done Monero. We could have done it by now if we really wanted to. But my personal view is, if we did it now, what would we gotten out of it? It would have just a lot of banging your head against the wall with a community that doesn't want to engage. And I think that's the key thing here.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I'm just going to quickly check that because we had like a rough series of topics. I just want to check that we kind of covered into all of this. So
sure.
Yeah, we kind of did. I just also want to check, how long are we going into this? Because it's like, it's a really great chat, but I just want to make sure.
D Ross is giving us a reminder that we are now over an hour as well.
Okay, fair enough. I have to ask, it's been a really great chat, and I'm always apprehensive because whenever you start off with a rough framework, I'm always like, let's let the conversation evolve organically, right? And that's a kind of basically what's happened, which has been great, and we've covered everything anyway.
So funny that the doctor is chattier than the lawyer.
Oh, you should see me at work, dude. But yeah. Okay. Hey, what area of law did you specialize in then?
I would say institutional frameworks. So basically looking into like what kind of laws should governments pass, how the laws interact with each other. My last work was actually relating to drainage, which was actually a lot more exciting than I thought it would be. But
fair enough. It was always like that. I mean, I'm trying to think. Okay, I won't lie. I was having to do questions on rectal prolapse, and as much as I bitched and moaned about it, it was kind of interesting. So, but I get it. No, it's been really good talking to you. I'm just wondering, is there anything else that you wanted to sort of cover while we're here?
No, maybe just a quick recap, like, okay, like when we're going online, like how people can get part, or like what's the process like. I guess there'll be guides below this video and stuff like that, and where you can engage you guys. That would be great. Yeah.
So I'll do a super quick summary, but we'll have links at the end and probably peppered throughout. you can go to particl.io, and that's particl.io. There's no E on the end of Particl. So go to particl.io, download the Particl desktop client, not Qt, not the others, just Particl desktop. It's for iOS, it's for PC, it's for, for Linux. So just get the Particl desktop client. When it's downloaded, set it up, create a Particl wallet. Once you've done that, create a wallet called Market, M-A-R-K-E-T. That will start populating with listings. Within the actual user interface, you can see the SwapBot client. So basically, send Zcoin to use that SwapBot client, and you'll be able to send Zcoin. So hopefully by the time you're seeing this video, this payment integration should be done. It'll be the version 2 of our desktop client. Just send
And you
Zcoin,
can buy the
you'll get
first one to buy spinach, private spinach.
Yeah.
Because I saw that on the
list. So yes,
yeah.
use a private transaction to utilize that aspect of it to effectively privately swap in and out. There's no KYC, there's no costs. It can be downloaded anywhere. It's free to use. So play around, buy some goods, sell some goods. If you want to exit, if you want to hold on to your part, by all means do so. If you want to exit to Zcoin, go ahead. We also have an option to exit out to Bitcoin as well, and actually we'll be adopting the DAI stablecoin fairly soon as well, and there'll be other cryptocurrencies that are coming into that SwapBot after that, but we'll be doing it incrementally. At this stage, it's just Zcoin because we want to engage with the community. We welcome you guys to come over to our Telegram, our Discord channels. Feel free to join our forums, but I tend to inhabit the Discord, the Telegram, and the Riot channels. They're all linked, so join one, you're joining all. And I tend to be hanging around in those, so I'm always around to answer questions. There's quite a few dedicated community members there, and honestly, have fun, play around with the platform, make a few listings, buy a few things, see how it goes. We've got a lot of success in terms of sales already. One of our community members, Ben, made a mad escrow tracker, which is showing 85% of the escrows have been unlocked, which means 85% of our transactions, they've been pretty much successful, and the pending ones, they will probably get unlocked at some point. So it works. We've demonstrated this, that the platform's been live using the Park token for since August of last year. But now we're in a different phase. Keep an eye out for version 3, because that's a massive upgrade in terms of usability and in terms of functionality and in terms of ease of use. We're doing it for you guys because we kind of recognize your community is special and quite awesome in that way, and that they're quite open, and we're hoping that you'll recognize the initial setup quirks, but once you get past them, actually it's a really sweet system.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy Stardew Valley as soon we can get Zcoin on it.
Dude, I just want to say it's been really good talking to you, and I hope to do this again.
Sure, and if you want to visit us at zcoin.io, we have a Telegram community as well, so all the links should be below somewhere. And it's been a real pleasure, and hopefully get to hang out soon when this whole craziness subsides.
Oh yeah, keep an eye out. There's a ray of hope in there. I'm pretty optimistic. Eventually.